August 20, recording in progress. It is August 26th, 2021. We have in person 4 of our board members, Deborah Lurie, David D'Souza, Brian Giannini Upton, and Tam Din, and attending by Zoom and presiding by Zoom myself, Maggie Ty Tucker. This is a regular meeting of the school board. I am looking for a motion to establish the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor of establishing the agenda as posted, please say aye, or otherwise indicate your agreement.
Aye.
I can't actually see Tam the way things are set up right now. Is there any possibility, just for voting purposes, can I get either like a window with her, or if we can have her on screen when we have a vote on something? Okay, sorry. Can we do that again? All in favor of establishing the agenda as posted, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? No. Okay, the ayes have it. We are going to have an open public hearing on the 2021 to 2022 operating budget, presentation of budget and 4-year projected budget. So I am hereby opening that hearing.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So tonight we are going to have the budget resolution come before the board for adoption for the 2021-2022 fiscal operating budget. We're gonna do a quick high-level review of what we covered last board meeting, where essentially we laid out the context of where the budget came from, the things, the principles and concerns that we had as we went into the budget, as well as what our primary goals for this coming year are. Looks like Andrew is queuing it up. So as I said, quick context, quick overview. Context is we're coming into the upcoming school year, 21-22 school year. It's kind of hard not to talk about the pandemic and all the effects of the pandemic as we go into the coming year. We're still amidst the concerns that we have as we went into last year in terms of enrollment, in terms of funding, in terms of staffing and safety. There's a lot of things that we had to address this year. As we were going through last year, we had planned to open the school year in person once we started getting ready and gearing up. We didn't feel it was quite safe to start in person. No one else was starting in person, and so we moved into hybrid mode, fully remote. And at that point, we started losing enrollment. We lost about 280 students, full-time equivalent students. So that drove a significant hit to our revenues. We lost a significant chunk. We had significant concerns as we went through the rest of the year about what the future would hold for us for the year. We made moves to start reducing staff and furloughing staff and getting ready for the challenges coming up in 21-22. Midway through the year and at the very end of the legislative session, the legislature came through with enrollment stabilization. It brought us additional money for the enrollment that we had lost. It brought us additional money for transportation, funding that we had lost. It brought us supplement funding for federal dollars. We are not a low poverty district. Therefore, we didn't get as much per student as our neighbors did. So the state identified 14 of these districts in the state. It's 14, right? I believe it's 14.
It was less than 20. I don't
Yeah,
know
it was
exactly.
less than 20. There's very few of us in the state that do not qualify as a Title I district. And as such, we received additional funding. These were one-time dollars. The state supplement to the federal dollars and what is called ESSER, those are one-time dollars that are being dedicated to student recovery and safe operations of our buildings. that means that we have them available for a short window of time. We can only spend them once. Doesn't mean that we could continue to operate as we have been for an extended period of time, but what it did was it gave us breathing room for 1 year to retain some of the staff that we had been planning on releasing to right size our staffing model to the enrollment that we were projecting. We recalled those staff members back for a short period of time for 1 year based on that one-time funding to meet the learning recovery objectives that we had identified. So in the elementary buildings, the middle school and the high school, we had identified certain opportunities to provide additional services. Carving out a special portion of time for the elementary librarians. We added additional staff at the middle school to ensure physical distancing. We added time to the librarians at the high school to create a study center and a tutoring center. We added time for English language learners and a variety of other options, math specifically. So we were looking at ways that we could use the funding to help support those objectives as we went into next year's budget. And as we started looking at other opportunities that we had, we knew that we would have opportunities for summer school. So the vast majority of our summer school expenses fell under one of the ESSER programs. We were able to recover those dollars, and it allowed us to expand the opportunities that we had for our summer school program this year. So we've been using those funds and dedicating them solely and specifically for the use of learning recovery. Other districts are using them for opportunities to upgrade air handlers, to buy new technology, buy more PPE. We have dedicated our funds to providing learning opportunities in the classrooms. That's how we wanted to look at it. As we were looking at enrollment projections for the coming year for 20-21, we had already started to see a pattern of slight decline year over year. Our enrollment was shrinking. When the pandemic hit and we went into 20-21 school year, it took a nosedive. And what that did is accelerated the enrollment decline projections that we had. And the staffing model that we have previously is unsustainable at those lower levels. Pre-pandemic, our K-3 class size based on the OSPI's formula was 16.3. The minimum funded level was 17. So we do not receive any additional funding for our class size below 17. During the pandemic, our class sizes were 14.3 based on OSPI's ratio. We have, unfortunately, we have a very rich staffing model that we've enjoyed for years because we were growing. We had an extra capacity every year because we had just a few more students than we projected. Now that we're declining, we're having the opposite effect. We have more staff than we can sustain at the rates that we're seeing. And so as we're looking forward in the next few years, 21-22 school year is a year for recovery. We had talked about at the beginning of the pandemic, we needed to retain our staff. We needed to make sure that our students had adequate access to resources, physical distancing needs. We kept staff where they were. As we're coming into this new year of 21-22, we're looking at learning recovery. How do we bring our kids back? How do we help them re-engage in society in appropriate social, emotional behavior and learning? Watching my own kids, watching them interface with their friends and engage with their, in playtime, it's different than before. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done for these kids that are coming back after being isolated for so long. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And we want to make sure that we have resources for them. So it was our expressed priority that we provide resources and maintain this staffing model through this next year so that we can support learning recovery and make sure that our students are receiving what they need now. Yes.
Can you just clarify, just for the purpose of transparency, when you talk about student-teacher ratio and the numbers, can you clarify? Because I know that most, if not all, elementary class or K-3 are bigger than what you're saying. So
Yeah,
can you just
thank you.
clarify that?
Yeah. It is, so OSPI's formula is slightly misleading when they say 17 to 1 money. What it means is they take a district-wide average of all the K-3 students, and then they divide that by all of the K-3 teachers, a portion of K-3 special education teachers, so all the teachers, special education teachers that deal with K-5, whatever portion deals with K-3 specifically, that gets rolled into the formula. All of the specialists, so art, music, PE, those get rolled into the formula as well. It does not include librarians, it does not include paraeducators. But all of those additional components means that a district-wide average, not specifically the second grade class at Lake Ridge, but a district-wide average of K-3 class size. The formula will give us the additional funding for class size when a district has a staffing to student ratio of 17 to 1 up to 25 and a quarter to 1. So we are well below the target staffing numbers that OSPI is looking at when we have that formula. So yeah, we may have classrooms that are 21, 22, 23, but with all of the other staff that are engaging with those K-3 classes, the student to staffing average across the district is at or below 17. Yeah. So as we're looking forward to 21-22 school year, we know that we have needs. We know that our students have needs. We know that we have a lot of staff. In order to support those needs, we need to retain staff. So we are putting forward a budget that uses the resources we have in our reserves to support our learning objectives to a much greater extent than we have in the past. It is nerve-wracking when we look at the numbers, especially for me. The projected revenues of 67.57 million, projected expenditures of 72.75 million, means that we will use that we will use the vast majority of our reserves. We plan going into the fiscal year with about $5.6 million, or about 7% of projected expenditures, and coming out with about 470,000. Now we know historically of the authority that the board grants us to spend every year. Historically, we average about 95% of spending. So 95% of what is allocated to us, we will spend. That 95% gets us to a fund balance of roughly $2 million. So just a little over. There are opportunities for additional funding coming up. While we had allocated the entirety of the ESSER 2 grant to summer school, we still have about $200,000 left to claim. So that's another $200,000 that can be reimbursed from the state. There's potential for additional safety net reimbursements coming into next year. So there are some opportunities to recover and reimburse for certain expenses. So there is some optimism. When we brought the presentation to the board 2 weeks ago to talk about the initial concepts of the budget, we were at system-wide, we were at projected enrollment minus 2 students. So we projected enrollment 4,110 students. We were at 4,108. Currently, we are almost at 4,200. So we've gotten a bump in enrollment, which means that we're going to get a bump in funding. We'll have to we'll keep tracking it and make sure that those numbers are fairly consistent, but we're seeing some students return, which brings us, it's exciting for me. And not just that, cheating, but also that we have more students engaging and returning to be a part of the MISD community, because we need them. need those faces, we need their contributions and their personalities in the classrooms. So as we're looking at the general fund, it is nail biting. We do have some considerations. We will be monitoring it very closely as we go through the year. As we look out the 4-year forecast, last, I believe it was in November, December, and January of the current school year, we brought all of our fiscal concerns to the board. We talked about projected enrollment. We talked about spending down fund balance. We talked about, what do we do moving forward? And one of the things that we talked about is that we would have a plan to start bringing the district back up into the policy level that the board has established regarding minimum fund balance, which is a minimum of 8 and a target of 10. We are not near that at the end of this fiscal year, but the concept that we brought to the board was that we would start working slowly over the next several years to build that up. And so when we look at the 4-year forecast, we took a look at what we normally would spend and started looking at our projected revenues and then subtracting out that $500,000 a year that we initially conceptualized that we would start putting into the fund balance. And so when we look at the 4-year forecast, those numbers and the expenditures are what we would need to bring our spending down to meet those objectives, and not just the normal projected budget capacity that we bring, but more of this is what we really kind of believe we will be spending and what we need to spend to meet those objectives. And so by the end of that 4-year forecast, that $450,000 is well above $1 million. So it's about $1 million in it. No, it's a little over $2 million, I believe. So we do have a plan. It's going to be painful. There are cuts. We will need to make some right sizing happen in the district. And it will be a challenge. Every year, as part of the process for adopting the budget, we have to send our budget to the ESD, the Education Service District, ours being the Puget Sound Education Service District, for just as kind of like a sanity check, and we'll make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. The response back to us this year was, wow, you have a very tight ship. We said, yes, we know. We have a plan. And it's going to be a tight ship for several years. But we can do it. Our motto is, we can do anything. We can't do everything. And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of things that we can't do. But all of our decisions will come before the board. All of our priorities and our considerations. You'll have an opportunity to weigh in, as this is one of your main priorities, your objectives and responsibilities. And it's our responsibility to make sure that you, as the governing body, are comfortable with what we're bringing forward. So with that being said, and with the very high level review of where we're coming in, are there any additional questions or comments or concerns?
I'd like to just make one comment. When Ty said right size, he is really referring to our rich staffing model that is pretty historic here on Mercer Island. And so making those adjustments within our class size is really across the system. And that's just something that's going to need to be continually looked at, because again, as you all know, 85% of the budget is people and staff. So we'll continue to be looking at every position, just as we've done over the past year, we started to see the decline is coming.
So I think one thing that I need to clarify as we talk about this, and I kind of danced around it a little bit at the very beginning, but we were on track to make much more significant cuts, I think, mid-year. The cuts that we had proposed to the board was about $2.5 million. Pretty significant reductions. And as I said, we recalled a good chunk of that staffing back because we got ESSER dollars, the federal ESSER dollars, and because we got state supplements for that. So when we saw that we had funding that we could use for a 1-year period of time, one time to bring staff back to deal with these issues, and these concerns that we have for our students, we brought them back. But that is something that we're gonna have to revisit in this coming year, and most likely in the year after that. So this, as I said, this is not a short-term concern, but I just wanted to make sure that we were having all that considered in the discussion.
Just, I think that point, Ty, is really important, especially as we look long-term, because oftentimes we think, something's always gonna come in and save the day, and this year it was the ESSER piece, but there isn't that on the horizon. I think Director Giannini Upton, in terms of the legislative group in WASDA and others, this was really a one-time piece. And we knew, as you're saying, Ty, that recovery right now and making sure that this year launches our students and picks them up right where they are was really important in that investment. But I think people start to look at it of, oh, you're saying that now, and the cuts might be made, and we're gonna, bring up the term RIF again and all of that. And no, you're just saying that, and it's not really gonna happen. I think it's important for us all to remember that those ESSER dollars minus some sort of intervention by the state or the federal government, that's just not the reality, and we don't see that on the horizon. We've also talked to our advocates in Olympia who have reassured us that there's not going to be any changes to the levies. There's not going to be, that's not on the horizon right now. So it's just a reminder to us all that what we went through this past year is something we're going to have to get a little more comfortable with, not because we want to, but we have to for sustainability.
Will we be seeing another reduction in force proposal to the board again, is what you're saying? I thought these were one-time hires this year. So those fade away, but even on top of that, there will be still another reduction in force.
Again, it's adjusting your staffing based on enrollment, of course, and where the enrollment is, and then also staff attrition. Where does that fall? And do we always need to replace all of those positions as they attrit again when we get towards the spring of next year, and looking at what that staffing component. So we do start early because we have so many timelines we need to meet. But you're right, Director D'Souza, many of the at-bats are limited. And so, yes, they would go away, so to speak, at the end of this year, because those portions of positions or full positions are classified as limited positions. But as we look at the class sizes, that's where we're going to have to really do some adjustments in making sure that we're within what our budget can move forward.
So bringing up the legislative cycle, so we're in the first year of the biennium right now. So as we head into our next legislative cycle, it'll be the short session, and we shouldn't anticipate any major financial changes to the budgets. And so that's 2 years down the road, unless there's something in the rescue. So it's important to recognize in that cycle, it's a 2-year cycle. And so this upcoming legislative session in January will be short and will probably not be budget oriented.
I think it's important to remember also that for the last almost 5 years, the main focus of the state legislature has been school funding, almost to the exclusion of a lot of the other work that needs to be done in the state legislature. And we have heard from numerous state legislators that they are fatigued with school funding. We've worn them out with bringing, let's fix this. We need to fix that. Let's do right for our students, and we worn them out. There's work that's been put off for years, and so I think that's a very valid point that we're in the first year of a 2-year budget cycle. The budget has just been adopted, and we got a whole lot of one-time money from the state in terms of transportation and student enrollment stabilization. that we heard very clearly, don't come back to us. You're done for now. We have other work that needs to be done.
Meanwhile, it gets more expensive to do public education. And with new laws that were passed, such as mitigating lead in the water, the testing requirements, those are unfunded mandates. So while there was some money put towards that, it's towards mainly a study to figure out how much it would cost in order to mitigate that in the future. So there are a whole lot of, with those changes in the legislature that just happened, there are a whole lot of costs associated. They're going to make it more expensive for us moving forward without that funding presented.
And I think that's a great point, because I think we also have to remember that the new mandates or the new expectations through legislative action are on the operational side. They're also on the teaching and learning side. And, you know, neither one of them can be put off, but how are we going to be able to do that with the resources? And those are the challenges that we have. Again, it goes back to what can we not do? Because we have to do these, and those are very challenging decisions that we have ahead of us. But thank you for bringing that.
Yeah, and it continues to add into the FTE and the hours spent in that. The big question I was hoping you could address in there is that within the fund balance, there are pockets of monies in there that are not restricted, but are really restricted. They're monies that need to be there for paid leave or vacation time, sick leave, those sorts of things that may or may not be used, but they need to be funded in there. And for me, every year we think it's going to be smaller with the projected budget or larger, and then not as much as used because those items weren't used. Not how much money is incorporated in that bubble of what we anticipate, we are required to anticipate, but may not be fully.
So there's two things when it comes to these pockets, these little mini buckets. You know, when we talk about how we have lots of buckets in school district finance, we've got operations, we've got capital. Within the operations, we have these other little buckets of restricted and semi-restricted dollars. There's two things that we really look at in terms of capacity when we build certain things. One is the leave balances, the overtime, the substitute costs. I mean, the substitute costs, like paying for substitutes, it's an expensive thing that we don't really get funded for. So one of the things that we have done is taking a look at managing our trends more and projecting based off of our trends, which these last 2 years has been incredibly difficult because there haven't been subs. I mean, for most of the year, people were teaching from home. And so if they got the sniffles, they just taught from home. And frankly, this has been phenomenal, but there have been less cases of people getting colds and flus. And so less need for sick time. It's just something that is a byproduct of being isolated and wearing masks. As we're getting back into classrooms and spending more time with kids, we know our petri dishes. It's entirely possible that those costs are going to go up this year. And so those have been very difficult to project. We feel like we need to add just maybe a little bit more this year to adjust for those needs, as well as the vaccine mandate. You know, we have to provide time for staff who may be ill after they get their vaccines. And so we need to adjust for that. The other big bucket that we have to deal with in the general fund is the technology related salaries. So we pay for a certain portion of our staff out of the capital and technology levy. Because of the intricacies of payroll and the contract, the employment contract that we have with the union, and how these days are allocated, we have to budget these expenditures in the general fund. But what happens is we reimburse the general fund out of the capital and technology, and we transfer the expenses over. So we record the expenses in capital and technology, which means that we free up this capacity. But because we had to budget it, it means that we have these larger balances of unused things, which contributes to that 5% that we don't normally spend. And so when we were looking at, we were very lean this year and trying to budget for other things that we normally do on trends, or we normally think that we we don't really need 50,000 here. We haven't spent 50,000 on this in a long time. We're gonna pull this. We had some conversations with Deputy Superintendent Rendell about his curriculum adoption plans. And I was kind of poking him, do we really need all this money this year? Can we back it off a little bit? But we do need the money for training, and we do need the money to run adoptions. So there are certain things that we can't just not budget, but he may not spend the entirety of his budget. So we try, and we are continuing to try, but there are certain things that, because of the intricacies of how things work, we do need the capacity.
Thank you, Ty. I think as a district, we've been very good about being very pragmatic with respect to our budget throughout the years. We have never overspent. We have always been rather conservative. But then when things do go in a favorable way, when McCleary came and things like that, we were very generous with pay raises and such as well. So I think we've seen both sides of this play out very positively by being pragmatic about our budget and not getting ahead of our skis. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the details you take care of for us. So thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in to say that I feel like you've thought through a lot of details and a lot of different possibilities for how things could go this year, and that I appreciate that we had a rainy day fund to begin with, and you know what, we've had a rainy day, like a rainy year and a half, and so I appreciate the thought that has gone into kind of how we're going to rebuild that fund, because you really never know what is around the corner. So thank you.
I appreciate the plan, having been on the other end of it in my work, and it's, budget cycles, and it's like, it's the same thing. It's, I don't know the right word for it, but, we're in crisis, and then, oh, okay, everything's okay this year. And then the next year it's crisis. It's really hard on morale. So my question is, what do you guys have planned to help with our staff morale, to reassure? I mean, how much are you communicating this plan, this concern? Because, like I said, I've been through it work-wise, and, it's the end is coming, it gets put off, but it does eventually hit. And we don't know if it's going to be this year, next year, the year after, but it's going to hit. So what are you guys doing to help, maintain morale for our staff?
There's a lot of different ways, of course, communication. So when we talked earlier about, limited positions that were brought back with $1 or portions of positions, and making very clear to those employees that that's their dollars, this is one-time dollars, this isn't going to be sustained. So making sure that folks are aware of the story, the budget story, and understand it. And a lot, it's a day-to-day, and a lot of it does fall on our site administrators, because they're there every day with teachers, and sometimes having to say no to budget things, and giving the full explanation of here's the why, here's the rationale, and here's why you have as many students in your class as you do, and here's why we have to build a faster schedule the way that we built it, because we do have to be aware of where our budget is. So it's really being as transparent as we can with our partners in leadership at MIA, as well as making sure that our site administrators have the information, because to be honest, that's who staff will really listen to and relate to, and so keeping them educated and up to speed on what's happening in budget, so that they're able to have a conversation about it as well. And ice cream and lunch sometimes helps too.
I think it's I think the first thing is starting off, picking up where Superintendent Klosky is leaving off there is just, the first part is launching this school year and reminding everyone about our why and what we're here for and what got us into this profession. And then, throughout the year, definitely being more proactive and honest about where we are. But I think we've also started to staff the schools. If I'm thinking about our kindergarten classes, that will be a little higher. They're certainly not above the contractual language, but they're higher than they've been. So some of it is just reminding people that we're not doing that because we want to put more kids in classes. We're doing it because that's what we need to do to remain fiscally sound. And so we'll have to look at other classrooms and say, you know what, this year we chose not to do it in this grade level because we knew there might be greater impact to those students returning. But setting that expectation early, being transparent all the way through, and being consistent. No one likes to have that boomerang effect. And so I think those are going to be really important pieces as we partner with MIEA, as we partner with the individual staff members we have. And then, really reminding ourselves about, what is most important at the end of the day with our students.
So, President Tucker, we are still in the public hearing, and I don't know if you would like to reach out to hear if there is any public that wants to speak during the public hearing. And just a reminder that we do also have to officially close it when it's time as well.
Okay, sure. How are we managing that with people online versus people who are there in person?
We did still ask for folks who are online to let us know if they wanted to give input, and my understanding is we did not have any. Is that correct, Kendall? Correct. So we do not have any that online have asked to participate.
Gotcha. Okay. Anyone there in person who's attending that would like to provide public input? Can you please let the staff know? There's no one. Okay. Does any other board member have anything to add? Tam, we haven't heard anything from you. Sorry, my voice is really squeaky still.
So this is a preliminary kind of heads up of what we're planning to do. And Ty, you've always been really straight up, give us a lot of information, context. I really appreciate that. And part of it, like you all say, is how do we communicate and let the community along with us to know the decisions that we're making. So two things I hear that I really like is that how are we staying, our model is really focused on, our staffing model is really focus on like the learning recovery. So that really resonates with me. And how, when we talk about the rainy day, I still think we're during the rainy days. And so how are we, it might take us longer to get back to our fund balance, and that's fine, right? Because learning recovery is so important during this time. And I also hear things like, staffing morale. And then maybe we can process more. But I really like the fact that how we talk about when we're looking to right size the system, it is looking to right size the whole system and not just, staffing and like the teachers and really, and I think because we're all impacted. And so everybody knows that we have to deal with the reality of being more fiscally tight, right? But if the whole system is impacted, then I think that people understand that we're making really, right sizing the system. So I'm hearing all these things, and I think that, trust administrators, administration, and that we're all really making the best decisions for our students moving forward. So there are things that we can't control, but we're going to do the best we can. So I'm optimistic about that.
Thank you, Tam. So if there's no public input coming, then we'll just go ahead and close the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. Do we need to vote on that, or can we just close it? Sorry.
Just close it.
Okay, I hereby close the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. And we are going to move on to, thank you, Ty and everyone. We're moving on to recognition for our new associate principals at Mercer Island High School and at West Mercer / Island Park.
So we are really excited to be able to introduce in person, I've been using the words three-dimensional all the to our leadership team. We bring them in person to meet the board and just so you can put a face with the name and the only time you'll meet them, but it's certainly the first. So I know you've all seen the announcements, but with us today, I'll introduce Erica first. Erica is returning to Mercer Island High School, where she taught English for 17 years and did serve as an interim associate principal and an athletic director there. She also served as head cross country and track and field coach for the Islanders and was honored 6 times as PINCO Conference Coach of the Year. She previously served before coming back to us at Inglemoor High School in the North Shore School District, where she has focused on inclusivity for all students, started a student voice group to teach anti-racism to staff and students, and served on the district equity team. Erica has been working with her leadership team at the high school, as well as with our greater leadership team, and we are just absolutely thrilled to have her back. And I would like to invite Erica to come forward and grab a mic from Todd or Kendall over there. Oh, you have one. Oh, perfect. We'd love to hear. You've got a blue light, you're on.
Oh, okay. Have a good night. Perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction, and I feel really lucky to be back what I would call home. I really started my educational career here as a paraeducator, worked as a coach, and just have always been so impressed with the community and have felt so just included in every aspect of my own educational teaching career, and really excited to come back and get the opportunity to work with an incredible team, incredible district staff, and especially so excited to get to work with the students. So very thankful to be here, and I have 2 daughters that are 15 and 13, so I feel like I'm in it right now with high school kids in every way, and just looking forward to all that's ahead. So thank you so much.
And now I would like to introduce Tara Ramsey. Tara joins us from Juanita High School in Lake Washington School District. Their superintendent has not forgiven me yet, but that's okay. John and I get along. She served as an associate principal at Juanita High School. And there she worked to create academic and cultural systems to eliminate the achievement gap, increase graduation rates, and decrease the over-identification of English language learners, African American, and students from low-income homes into special education. She partnered with school district personnel to facilitate racial healing circles for student leaders during a pandemic, and providing a safe space for students with varying worldviews to process and build skills that will help navigate the local and national racial landscape. Before coming to Seattle, Tara served in various leadership positions in education, including as principal superintendent of a charter school in Georgia and founding principal of Building 21 School in Philadelphia. She previously taught for 11 years at all K-12 levels. Tara earned her Bachelor's of Arts in African American Studies and a Master's in Elementary Education from Temple University, and another Master's in Educational Leadership, Supervision, and Administration from National Louis University. And Tara is going to be serving as Elementary Associate Principal at West Mercer and Island Park. Yes. We're still practicing remembering. Welcome, Tara.
Okay, for the record, it's nice to meet you.
I did not know I was going to be speaking. And it's hard to follow. But what I will say is, this experience is, I just started July 1st, but from the interviewing process to present, I felt very welcome, and I felt cared for. And I mean, you guys have been in many industries and different companies and running your own companies. That's rare. And so I just want to highlight that I'm so grateful for not only being able to be in this sector and have high impact, but to be in this work with people who make me feel welcome and valued. So I look forward to whatever adventure we're going to have. And my love and passion for building systems and creating healthy cultures, I'm going to go, I'm 2 feet in. So thank you.
I just wanted to say welcome to both Erica and Tara. We are so happy to have you both with us. And I look forward to getting to meet you in 3D someday soon as well.
Can I just jump in and just welcome also, we're thrilled to have you. And I just wanted to also pass on a thank you to our HR staff. This was a heavy lift this year with new hires, people leaving and coming. And I think we landed on a really positive, we're better off for it. Not that we're not going to miss the people that have left, but I think that, overall, I think we're better off for it. It's a ton of work. And I know that they worked all summer recruiting, training, and welcoming our new staff. So thank you to them as well. And welcome. We're really excited to have you guys here.
Okay, great. We don't have anyone for public input, so we're going to move on to the superintendent report.
So we're going to update the board on a couple of things tonight, as you can see on the agenda. First, we have the semi-annual bargaining report, and Erin is, I can't see her from here, but yep, Erin is here, and she is going to talk to you a little bit about just where we are. It's not a bargaining year, so it's not going to be a long report.
Hello. So bargaining update, as Donna just announced, we are not in a bargaining year, so our contract goes through August 31st, 2022. So we're looking forward to a full bargain next year with both of our units, because unlike a lot of districts, we have 2 units, both under the MIEA. We have a classified unit and a certificated unit, and both contracts are open simultaneously. So we will be working on that next summer and spring. And we're looking forward to working with our MIA partners on some interest-based bargaining training to help us do that more effectively and efficiently. In terms of bargaining that we have been undergoing this summer, it isn't about the full contract. It's been about COVID-19 and impacts of the health and safety protocols and our reopening plan on the working conditions of our staff. We've been working very productively together and moving forward. Things keep changing, so it's been challenging as it was last year because our landscape is not static. But I think both teams, meaning the district and MIA team, has come into the bargaining with sort of students are the priority and with a commitment to getting us back open to a full 5-day-a-week full-time in-person schedule. So I think that was our baseline and it helped carry us through. In terms of other major accomplishments that I think will be done shortly with the most significant bargaining pieces. I know just today we agreed on how students will be able to access sort of an enhanced learning opportunity if they are in fact quarantined due to COVID and then able to attend school. I think that was a big piece both for teachers and educators and for our parents alike. So I think many people will be happy to see that. Any questions?
Can you give us an update on where we are with interest-based bargaining?
Yeah, so we are trying to be as interest-based as we can, given the tight timelines. I think we start most of our discussions and topics with our interest is X, what is your interest? And really trying to not presuppose a solution before we come into things.
We are planning on a in-person, ideally, training, and that's all subject to how the pandemic plays out throughout the year. Probably early next year, so early 2022. So, because we need time to form our teams before we do bargaining, but we will largely have completely different teams than we've had before. I think everyone's been tired because last year was essentially, not only did we have an open contract last summer, we spent an entire year bargaining. So it's going to be new people, and we have a lot of new people just in the district generally, and we haven't done this type of training in a long time. So it'll be in person, and it'll probably be an extensive training. So that is what we are hoping to do, pandemic permitting.
If I could jump in there, just express some gratitude. Bargaining is challenging to begin with, and doing it in the middle of a pandemic while standing on shifting sands is next to impossible. Our students in this district could not have been served this last year if it hadn't been for the hard work and a whole lot of trust from both bargaining teams. And I know that you've been doing that over the summer and will continue to do that, but I just, for all groups on all sides of the table and in that bargaining room, I just want to express gratitude that you stay focused on students as the priority, and continue to move us forward as a district. We haven't had the same headaches and hiccups that other districts have, and that's just because of the great working relationship. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I know many members of the community are concerned about the quarantining and students accessing information. When can our community expect to get updates on what that's going to be?
So you just gave us a great segue into the next part of the superintendent report. Oh, there we go. So if there's no more questions about bargaining, we'll move on to 2021, 2022. That's the 20 schools update. So we're going to update you first of all on school opening and some of the questions that Director Lurie just mentioned, health and safety, where are we in what procedures will be in place. I do want to remind everyone that our COVID response plan is updated and is available on the website, and we'll make sure that we're broadly communicating that link for everyone. We are going to be also doing a webinar really focused on opening schools and trying to answer a lot of the questions. There's a new FAQ on the website that I think I did send to all the board, but again, we're trying to broadly educate and send people to that, and that is a fluid document. So what Erin was referencing as to quarantining, we'll get that up there as soon as those documents are signed so that parents can have access to that. But Monday at 5, we'll be doing a live webinar where our nurses and our administration team will be kind of doing a question and answer process for a lot of the questions that I know you're getting as a board, we're getting here as well. And we'll record it so that we can also post it so folks can see it. So Fred, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the things that we'll address?
So we will have, and Tony Kuhn, Director of Operations and Maintenance, will be on the call, along with an administrator from all of our levels. Actually, I think all 4 elementary principals will be there, and then a middle school principal, as well as a high school principal. I'll be mainly conducting it and asking questions based on the ones I've seen that you've seen, as well as ones we've received as well. We're going to cover everything from health and safety related to the nurses. Oh, Carla Rimmer and Shelley Sage will be there as well. We're going to cover everything from what does a family do if their child is sick, just in general, and just have it as simple as that, because it's one thing to think about it right now and to say, oh, of course I'd keep my kid home. But when you're in the moment as a parent, it's different. You're like, well, what should I do? And everyone's been confused. So Carla and Shelley are going to cover those. We're going to cover lunchroom questions with the different levels and have the principals talk about the lunchrooms. We'll talk about recess. So we're going to cover a lot of territory in that with just some questions and answers and just get some authentic perspective for our community. What I hope that everyone knows is that all of the mitigation strategies that not only have been recommended, but have really been at the heart of what we've done since the beginning are going to be in place for our students. And we are balancing this desire to have our students back in person with the health and safety of making sure that we do that safely. And it's going to require all of the different layers. And there's not just one layer that's more important than the other. When I think about testing, and there's been questions about testing, do we have the capability to do some testing of our students who are symptomatic or our staff who are symptomatic? Absolutely. Are we using that with athletic teams already? Absolutely. And so we're doing those things, especially as we're in these higher levels of spread or whatnot. But it's also about being vigilant and being very aware as a community that, if our students aren't well, let's not send them to school. And let's be open and honest. I think Director Lurie, you modeled that well for the community when your family went through that before, that it's not a stigma that we should be worried about in terms of, my family has COVID, I need to be quiet about it. It's the reality of making sure that everyone's safe. So we'll share with the people that need to know. We'll be confidential about it in the way that we need to be confidential. But at the end of the day, it's about the safety and the ability to keep schools open and running. I know that even things like not having after-school enrichment in our elementaries for the first couple months, that's not what we want. But we need to do that so that from 9:15 to 3:45, we can't have students in the classroom as we're moving forward. So we're looking forward to a great event on Monday. We will record it as Superintendent Klosky had mentioned. And it's not the only way that people can access information. They can continue emailing their principals, and certainly as they learn who their teachers are, because their teachers will also have great examples about what they're doing in the classroom each and every day as students go to recess, come back, as they transition in the hallways, as we're moving forward.
And a lot of the detailed pieces that I know parents are really anxious about, snack and lunch and recess, a lot of those, we're going to need parent support on in reminding your child. I didn't have young children during the pandemic, but I had young children at one time. And how many times did I remind them when they were going into the restroom, wash your hands when you're done. When they came in from playing, before you sit down to eat, wash your hands. So help us and support us, remind your kids of these mitigation strategies and how important they are to keep themselves healthy, but also everyone else around them. Kudos to President Tucker for also modeling. I've tested, I'm negative for COVID, but I'm still having symptoms and I want to keep the rest of the community healthy. So those kinds of strategies as a community are going to support keeping our students in school. So we encourage everyone to support us in reminding children how the mitigation strategies are layered, and they're all important, and doing our best to remember them all so that we can have our children back in school. Any questions on the health and safety aspect? And then we're just going to talk a little bit about we had staffs back today. So we had our new teachers here Monday and Tuesday. A couple weeks ago, we had our leadership team retreat. So we just want to share a little bit of some of the preparation we've been doing with staff as well in professional learning as we get ready for school. So before we move on to that, any questions about any of the health and safety pieces?
Sure. From a health and safety perspective, I know all of us are reading in all the magazines and articles and websites, all these extra things some districts are doing, other districts are doing, some are doing less, some are doing more. And I know we follow the Department of Health guidelines very strictly. How do we think about all these different things other people are doing? A union of 5,000 odd districts around the United States could be a lot of different things we could be seeing as suggestions. What do we think about those? How should people be communicating those? How are we thinking about that?
We have been very specific and always following the Department of Health guidance. And I think the person who articulates this the best is our legal counsel, Executive Director Battersby, because we've had these conversations, the what ifs, and Erin has been stalwart and steadfast in her explanation of the why.
Yeah, and in terms of, we are consistent and have an agreement, actually, not only are we required to follow the King County Public Health guidance, but we also have an agreement with the MIEA that we will always follow our local guides, so the Department of Health, Seattle, King County Public Health, in terms of the health and safety of our students. And we have to trust, I mean, I'm not a doctor. I do not have the requisite degrees to make determinations on people's health. And we have to trust that the experts are striking that careful balance of health and safety. And that they believe and have evidence to support that these mitigation measures are appropriate given our setting. They have issue-specific guidance for our setting. And so that is what we follow. And to pick and choose which guidance we'll follow is not appropriate, and to pick and choose which guidance we're going to exceed also sort of unsettles that careful balance. And then where is the end to that? Because I don't no longer have a why. If the request is that we put everybody in bubbles, I mean, that's an extreme, and I have not gotten that request, which is why I gave it to you. How do I say no to that when I've let other points where we've exceeded the guidance? So really, it's trusting and being sensitive to that guidance and maintaining that and doing what's best for kids in terms of getting them back within the promulgated guidance. And I mean, hats off to our staff for being creative within the guidance and still finding ways to serve students even when we were shut down in terms of not having anyone here. So I think we do have to recognize the efforts, and it's also having a common understanding of what's going on, because then everyone can look to the same resource, and that is how we can spur creativity in our staff, because we all are speaking the same language, and we're starting with a baseline and clear understanding of what are the requirements, and from there we can scaffold and build a solid education for our kids. Any other questions before I hand this back?
And we are the very first to get those updates from Department of Health. I mean, we're, as one of us is sending the link out to the rest of us, we already all have it open and are reading through it and digesting it and figuring out how does this apply to us? How does this apply to the work that has to be done at the bargaining table for the impacts of it? And really staying consistent with that is what has carried us through. And we know that in our state, there are some who think that the strategies at the state level have been too stringent, but I think we also have to point to the many of the really tragic numbers that have come out when folks haven't had stringent mitigation strategies. The deaths per capita is really tragic in many places, and in Washington State that has been mitigated because of the more stringent strategies. So we're going to continue to follow it, and yes, we see those articles too, and we get them sent to us, and we do point folks back to the Department of Health guidance and our COVID response plan, which also aligns with that. And if people are worried about a certain kind of mask or want a different kind of mask for their child, they're absolutely assured that that is appropriate. If at any time someone is teased or bullied or felt like they are comfortable in a specific mitigation strategy that they've enhanced, they need to let students particularly need to let the adults know, because that is something that we're going to take care of and make sure that it doesn't happen to any student.
Superintendent Claus, can I add on to that too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think another way of looking at your question is, with all this information pouring in, not just locally, but nationally, and even across the world, how do we, thumb through all of that? And even in the journals we read from AASA, American Association of School Administrators, and these national magazines, it's really hard because everything's so contextual. we have to go with what are the surrounding circumstances in our zip codes that are not only here on Mercer Island, but surrounding where our staff live. And, you know, we know that each governor is making what they think is the best decision for their state. And then, you know, we have county executives and others. And so obviously there's a political piece to this. We were talking to, one of our staff members was talking to a former staff member who left for Texas to move back home to be by family. And we were sorry to see her go, but it was great to hear from her. But she shared she's, you know, one of 5 staff members in a huge campus wearing a mask. And it's just so different. And I'm not here to say that's good or bad or get in the middle of the mask debate, but that's their context. So things that come out of one state may not even be relevant to us because our guidelines are just different. So we try to really anchor ourselves in the guidance that we're getting. And I'm, you know, fortunate to be in a place with a vaccine rate to where it is, because I think that as the scientists keep at least articulating, that's one of the very best things we can do in the mitigation efforts. Now, our elementary students, we're hoping that's coming soon. And so I get it. As a father of an elementary kid myself, I get it. There is that nervousness with sending our kids back. My older 2 are heading back next week to Issaquah High School. They're vaccinated. My younger one is not, as he heads in. So I understand, I think we all as parents and as educators, but we're going to be really diligent about the guidance that we have and execute it to the best of our ability and keep kids in school, keep them open and keep them safe.
I just wanted, oh, sorry. I just wanted to chime in and say, as a parent of an elementary school student, I'm trying to convince my daughter to double mask until there's a vaccine available. And really, I'd be happiest if she was in fact in one of those bubbles that Erin was describing, but she's not going for that. So I'm working on the double mask. Because of her own health issues. But I wanted to also add in, as a former journalist, that I also read a lot of, you know, what's going on nationwide and worldwide, and what reporters, you know, what medical reporters report on is the stuff that's most cutting edge and most interesting and most unique. And all of these, you know, experiments that are being done and kind of pilot projects that are being done here and there kind of need to get collated together and looked at by the experts. And then they need to make the determination based on kind of the preponderance of the evidence of, you know, what is effective and feasible for the average, say, elementary school to do. And we are relying on those experts at, you know, the CDC and at the Washington State Department of Health, et cetera, to kind of go through that and digest it and make recommendations that we can then follow in good faith. So we do appreciate that everyone is nervous about kind of getting kids safely back in there and getting them through till there's a vaccine available for their age group. But like Donna said many times last year, we're doing this kind of many layers of Swiss cheese approach where there might be a little hole here, a little hole here, but if you have sufficient layers of Swiss cheese, hopefully nothing will get through, and nothing did get through last year. So thank you. Anybody else? Questions for the superintendent about the superintendent report?
I'm glad you mentioned the Swiss cheese because I was going to talk about that. So for a year and a half now, I've carried around the infographic of the block of Swiss cheese, and each one representing a different step of mitigation. So there's masking, social distancing, washing hands, not touching your face, vaccinations, air systems, all of those things. And it's the combination of all of those things together that mitigate the risk, and that risk will never be zero. So there's also how much risk you're going to assume as a system, knowing that there's always the chance that something will break through, something will get through. And so I just, now that we're meeting in 3D, I realize I need to print out the Swiss cheese infographic and laminate it so I can physically have it with me as well. But it also made me think of Hattie's visual learning, and where he breaks down the steps there in the metadata. It's not just the layers of Swiss cheese, but which slices of Swiss cheese give the biggest bang for the buck. In order to be fiduciarily responsible, we've got to make sure that we're investing in mitigation strategies that make sense, that work for our students and our staff and our community, but also work in the broader scheme of the financial picture. And so while there's many things that would be great to try and pilot, again, while Mercer Island School District can do just about anything it wants, it can't do everything. And so I think really leaning into those mitigation steps that we know have the biggest impact and stacking those is really the smartest plan.
Yes, thank you.
And also, the webinar, will that be recorded? To be recorded, and then also have there been conversation about how are we taking this information to families that may not be as fluent in English?
We certainly, one of the benefits we've certainly had with putting the dash or the response plan through Google and making sure that it's through there is hopefully with some of that translation there. We will certainly have the video, we'll have closed captioning so that it captures the elements there. And then all of our schools continue to reach out and make sure that if there are students who are responding back, especially our ELL teachers, of those families who we know may be needing more information or a different language, we reach out to them as well. So we depend on, I think, a multitude of ways. The webinar is a little bit on that trickier side, but we will have that closed captioning as well.
And we do have a partner for future vaccinations when they become available, and anticipate that as that gets ready to roll out, we will be able to support that just as we did with our 12 through 16-year-olds. So looking forward to that. And they've actually reached out to us to say, are you interested in a flu vaccine? So we really want to support the community and particularly our students in staying healthy. So we would also like to share a little bit on our 21-22 schools update about the teaching and learning side, which for us right now is really working with staff in a lot of the professional development that occurs at the beginning of the year. As I mentioned, on Monday and Tuesday of this week, is that right? Did I get it right? It's all starting to blur. We had, I think it was 31. It's sort of a little bit fluid, but 31 certificated staff, three-dimensionally in person with masks at Northwood, and gave them a lot of nuts and bolts and a lot about health and safety. But Dr. Rundle and his learning services team also spent a lot of time on really talking about instruction and our inclusive and equitable practices. And so I'm going to ask him to give you a little bit of an update on that as well. And then go into instructional technology day.
Great. Andrews, do you want to do instructional technology day? Or do you want me just to keep rolling through?
I'll let you take it.
Okay. Something that we're really trying to stay committed to, especially as we think about resources, is to make sure that we're aligning ourselves the best we can so that we are as efficient as possible, we're as clear as possible, but we're also not trying to do too many things all at once. And so starting at the beginning of the month with our leadership team and our instructional leadership team, we really started off with this theme, and we shared it at your last meeting, but knowing all of our students by name, strength, and need. And really having three core priorities this year. The first being continuing with last year's district improvement plan, which will be similar again, is removing barriers. And how do we identify those barriers? How do we interrogate them? And then how do we remove them so that students can reach their full potential? The next one is inclusion of all learners. Right there in our values is providing those inclusive and equitable learning settings. And the last one is owning all our students. And that really gets at the heart of the idea that if I'm teaching fourth grade and Director Bergstrom's teaching fourth grade, that they're not my fourth graders and his fourth graders, but we can own them both. And if I'm struggling with them, he might have ideas and vice versa. And if we're all in a science department, that they're not my third period bio students and my fourth period chem students, but they are all of our students. So if all students are working, if all staff are working with all students all the time, we have a much better chance of supporting the students and launching them. So using that theme from our leadership team, we actually continued with that. And that's what we used as our core platform with our newest staff members. And it was an exciting morning that Learning Services had the opportunity to have with them on Monday morning, bright and early. And we walked them through our values, vision, and mission. And these 3 core priorities for us this year, and thinking about how do we provide the professional learning they're going to need? How do we commit to professional learning ourselves? The idea that we need to do this within a system that all works together, and that's MTSS. And then we have partners such as Inclusive Learning, Katie Novak with UDL, and others that are coming alongside us. We then use that same discussion when we met with the mentors. So each of our mentees, as you might recall, or excuse me, each of our new staff members receives a mentor teacher. Oftentimes it's a colleague who's on their team or at their grade level. I had 45 minutes with them, and I walked them through a very similar process. And I modeled for them, and they engaged in knowing themselves as name by name, strength, and need. And then we walked through there. And then this morning, so that kind of leads us then in, well, the rest of the day, time HR works with our new staff. They walk them through all the technology nuts and bolts, make sure they have all access to all their hardware, but also all of our applications. They get an opportunity to be with our HR team to make sure they have their assurance squared away. They have all of their benefits packages squared away, just so that those aren't on their mind, that they can be focused on students and they're not worried about those other components. And then they get time. So that led us then into today. We kicked off this morning with Julie Costin and Christy Preddy Fronsack, who came and delivered our keynote this morning. And really, it wasn't focused on any one aspect other than really that inclusive education and what we can do as a system, not pragmatically, but in our thinking. And so we spent about an hour with them this morning, and then our teachers broke up into grade bands in each of the schools. We had updates for them on all of the nuts and bolts things that have changed with regard to attendance and things that we're doing differently. So we covered quite a bit of that, but we also gave them time to give us feedback around what additional training do they need? What are the resources that they're already seeing that they might want more of, or to be reminded about, so that our coaches and others know where to intervene with them moving forward. And then, of course, we had a wonderful lunch with them. Now, the other half of the day, using what we learned from last year, was actually asynchronous. So we've given everyone some choice, and they get to choose some asynchronous learning that our instructional coaches had already put together to engage in. And so between, I believe it was August 19th that it was launched in Dreves, all the way up until September 1st, they have until, complete the other portion of the day. So utilizing what we learned about from last year, as we can utilize some of these tools. And then tomorrow, the staff, all staff members will be coming back, certificated staff, to their buildings for professional learning in their buildings related to laying the groundwork for their school improvement plans and picking up on that. And then Monday, they will be in their classrooms, and we leave our staff alone so that they can really just focus on their classrooms and get those set up. So then on Tuesday, we can do final nuts and bolts. I know our elementaries will be welcoming families in for open houses and for families to be able to walk the campus and make sure kids know how to get from the buses to their classroom and the classroom to the buses. And then we're ready to roll on Wednesday morning, September 1st.
Our food service staff met yesterday at IMS. It was great to see so many of them coming back. We had many who worked so hard over the last 18 months to serve our students, some who had not been able to be here with us in the capacity of food services that came back, and then some new employees as well. So I went down and saw them yesterday, and they are just so excited to be back in our schools with students. And then looking forward to seeing our transportation department on Monday when our bus drivers will come in for their mandatory training, but it's always great fellowship down there. It's one of the most fun places to be with educators. So excited to see them on Monday. So that's where we are in our preparations for students coming back. I was sharing a story this morning that in my community schools did start today, and I didn't realize it, not having children in school. And I came out of my neighborhood and turned the corner onto a main street, and there was a school bus with the lights flashing, and I was just filled with joy. It warmed my heart until I realized I had to wait for that bus. And then I got a little bit, oh my gosh, I have to wait. I'm going to be late kind of thing. So just a reminder, everyone, the buses are going to be running and things are going to get a little bit slower in traffic, but the exciting news is the kids are in school. And that's our report, unless you have any questions.
No, that's good. Thank you. Do people want to take a break since we started at 5, or do you want to move on through another chunk of stuff before we take a little break? I can't see anyone's face except for Deborah. Deborah, your face represents the whole board right now.
Let's keep going. I'm not seeing anyone.
Keep going. Okay, we will keep going. Moving on to full governance process monitoring and language review. Board policy 1008, annual agenda planning. This is the annual monitoring of board policy 1008. The board report of compliance is attached for review and determination of compliance. And
Tucker,
yes.
went a little bit out of order. You jumped to number 3, and we still need to.
Oh, I
do
did.
number 2.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I jumped way out of order.
The budget tonight.
Okay. Woo. I was thinking, gosh, this is a late agenda. Yeah, okay. I knew we forgot something important. Backing up to partial governance process monitoring. This is a very important one. Board policy 1800 OE6, budgeting / financial planning, resolution number 702 to approve the 2021 to 2022 budget.
So just to note, there are 4 documents that are attached to this. The slide deck and the guide that were presented at the last meeting, the actual budget book, and if any of you would like a paper copy, they are available for your reading and viewing pleasure. And just let us know, and we'll make sure you get one. And then the resolution is also attached to the agenda as well.
I'd like to move that we adopt resolution number 702, approving the 2021-22 operating budget.
I'll second.
All in favor of approving resolution number 702, say aye, or otherwise indicate.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? No. And resolution number 702, our budget is approved by a vote of 5-0. Thank you all.
Insert a point of order.
Yes.
As just a matter of parliamentary procedure, typically after the motion and the second, there's a pause for discussion. I don't think there was any discussion covered it, but I just want to remind you. Thank
you so much. Yes, I kind of felt like we already had the discussion since we had the public hearing and people were commenting, but you are quite correct. All right. Item B, board policy 1800 OE11, facilities and capital assets, approval of construction consultant contract with CPM Incorporated. And sorry, go ahead.
This is the annual contract that we bring to the board every year. This is well known to you as Brandy. When Brandy, she works for this company and comes to us in support of being a consultant for our facilities. So here's the contract. I will say to you that the new buildings that were placed today, we are so excited, they look fabulous, would not have been placed today if it wasn't for Brandy. Quite a story behind that, and I can tell you individually at another time, but she fought hard for our students to have those in place rather than the extended timeline that was being projected. So you all know Brandy, this is the contract that keeps her serving us facilities.
Looking for a motion?
I'll move that we approve the 2021-22 personal services contract with CPM Incorporated, Brandy Fox.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question, and it's really not, well, it's a little bit about the contract. So most of the things, at least on this, in terms of general projects and summaries, is under attachment A, I'm looking at, are, kind of replacements that are just replacing other things. But there's some that are new, like the turf addition to the JV field at Mercer Island High School. Is that something that, is there going to be a work group to decide the most appropriate way to do that? I know there's been discussions in the past. And just to clarify, the JV field is the one between our stadium and the building, as opposed to the field
The
that's
north field, yeah.
down below by the
Yeah.
tennis courts.
There's two grass fields on the mega block. There's the north field, which is next to the pool, and then the JV field, which is between the stadium and the gym.
So is this, I don't have a problem with it being in the contract generally. As an addition, I understand that there's leftover funds as part of our interlocal agreement, and I think we should use that for our students. So the question is,
These projects are all projects that are part of the capital levy. So it's not, there's not a sinking fund as there is for the projects at the South Mercer Field.
so I guess my question more is, who is deciding? I mean, there's lots of different ways to do things, and is there a working group with, community members to decide? Because like I said, I mean, I've heard about, different fields and different rationale to improve, the two fields and lighting and the tennis courts, and who's making those decisions, and what's that process?
We've been working very closely with the athletic department at the high school, looking at the scheduling needs of all the different athletic programs. The JV field is used extensively during spring for the multiple lacrosse teams, the multiple soccer teams. It's also used by track and field. That's where they do the discus, the shot put, the javelin. So it is very tightly scheduled as part of our facility on the mega block. And so we have been working with the athletic department at the high school, trying to find what is the best way to go about doing this. We've received numerous drawings from the consultants that we're using at DA Hogan that does a lot of athletic field development and turfing. And so we have been exploring different options with the high school. We haven't decided anything concretely now. We have time before we have to make any further decisions. So there will be other opportunities to reach out and connect with the capital facilities.
And also, I know, I can't remember if we've talked here as a board, but I've talked with the president and vice president about our study sessions and potentially using even next week's study session part to discuss levies, which would include then, in particular, what encompasses in the capital levy as well as capital tax and the transportation. And we'll have staff there that can answer a lot of these questions as to how are the decisions made, and why are certain things done the way they are. So we'll be able to have a much more in-depth conversation at that time.
I just want to make sure that there's an opportunity. It's great that the athletic department is involved. I imagine that the band or the music program is involved, because I know the band struggles with getting field time during sports season too. But there's a lot of high passions from parents and from students in terms of using the fields, and also including not high school students. Are these fields, is this field going to be open to the public, rental basis more? Because it's going to be a year round. I know it's not in great shape. So there's just a lot of passions out there that our staff might not know. And just want to make sure that there's an opportunity that that community, students and parents are heard regarding what they perceive to be their needs.
Yes, we will make sure that there are opportunities for input to be heard about this project. As I said, the JV field is probably one of the most scheduled pieces of property, as well as the stadium that we have. And it is very tightly scheduled year round, not just in the academic year, but year round. And so by turfing it, we would be able to increase access year round. There are periods where we have to just let it be so the grass grows. Otherwise, it's just going to turn into the JV mud pit. And I'm sure the band will love that anymore. So there will be opportunities to bring the athletic community and to reach out to the capital projects team. Have voices heard. As I said, this is probably one of the more well-used parts of our facility. We want to make sure that it is it's as useful to as many people as we possibly can have it be useful to. We will, if there are concerns, please come to me, or if there's ideas about how to use it, please come to me, and I can bring those up with Tony and Brandy and the rest of it.
And I just want to say how I agree how lucky we are to have Brandy managing our facilities. I think, consistently coming in on time and under budget and communicating with the board in terms of how projects are going and what concerns she, as they come up. So that's very appreciated. And my question had nothing to do with her, but just under the attachment on the contract. So thank you.
Any other questions or concerns or areas of discussion regarding the contract? Okay, if not, let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor of approving the contract for services by Brandy Fox of CPM, say aye. Otherwise indicate. All opposed? Say nay. Nope. And nobody abstaining. So that passes by a vote of 5-0. Next topic, and I am following the correct order now, is Board Policy 1001, Governance Commitment, Superintendent Succession. So David and I have discussed together how to communicate what the board has been doing so far and kind of how to keep it going on an ongoing basis, as was done during the last superintendent selection process. And so David drafted these first couple of updates. Do you want to read them, David, since you're the author?
Sure. I think everyone has them on screen though. Instead of reading, I'll just give the general context here.
Yeah, that's fine.
We've had the website where we provide updates for the community as to what happens. And the idea would be that these would be regularly brought in front of the board for board to review the general tone and content, and then they can be published on the website once we approve. Again, the idea is this is a board initiated activity. Generally, Kendall has been in charge of minutes for the board meeting itself. But for this, usually the board tends to take the lead on this type of activity. And though the intent was also to keep the notes very factual and not go into the details of the meeting, because then people should attend the meeting to really understand the nuances of the details. And so that's the general style. So just looking for comment and feedback. We can iterate on these over time, and I'm sure we'll get a consistent style that will just be, this will be a somewhat pro forma as we go through.
I'll just say, I think it's great. Providing an opportunity for feedback before it's published, but keeping a published record, I think was really helpful last time in tracking the process and should serve the community well. Thank you.
Yes,
And-
I agree. This is really great. It just creates more transparency, keep the community along with us, what we're doing, and it's a quick snapshot for people to kind of delve deeper if they're interested in certain meetings. So I really like this idea. Thank you.
Just a note that the study sessions are not recorded. So if people are interested in the board meetings, they can go back and watch those on board docs based on the dates. But if they're interested enough in the process, they should actually try to watch those study sessions live if possible. But whatever gets talked about, the topic at least will be shared in this format. And we're kind of assuming that David and I will just trade off writing these summaries and then bring them to the board, if that's okay. I'm just looking for kind of general consensus on that. Okay. Deborah, any feedback on this process?
No, I think this is great, and I appreciate your guys' time to do this. I think having, for all the reasons cited, transparency and a record, and it's going to help us go back and make sure that we've covered all the bases that we've talked about hitting. So thank you.
I also,
Just a reminder to the president and the vice president, our communications coordinator, Craig Dardinger, is also at your service to support any of these communication pieces as well.
thank you so much. I also, just to say, in case it's not obvious, that I think this will make it much easier for people to track the process and to be able to kind of know when things have happened. So I realize we don't actually have a motion on this one. Does someone want to make a motion?
It says action under agenda item.
Is it on the consent agenda or something? No, don't we have to actually approve it?
Yeah, so I move we approve the meeting minutes as published.
I second.
Okay. All in favor of approving these meeting minutes as published?
So the meeting minutes are approved in the consent agenda. Could you be a little bit more
Sorry.
specific?
Oh,
Okay, yeah, I was wondering about that. That's why I was looking to Brian to give.
Oh, I'll be happy to do that. I move that we approve the format for district webpage about superintendent succession.
it's not really the format though, is it? Wait a minute. It's more the content. It's the format and the content.
Okay, I'll take that as a friendly amendment. To approve the format and content for the district webpage about superintendent succession as presented.
Second.
Okay, thank you, everyone. This is a real team effort. All in favor, say aye.
I have a question first.
Oh.
I thought we were going to be voting on whether or not the board approves thought exchange. Is that something separate than this?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's something separate than this.
Okay, all right, that's.
This is just the updates. Okay, okay. One more time from the top. All in favor of this, of the format and the content for the update, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, that format and content are approved by a vote of 5-0. Thank you all. Okay. Next, yes.
As part of this agenda item, I move that we approve the purchase of Thought Exchange to assist with our superintendent search.
If you could approve it as the use of thought
The
exchange.
use of Thought Exchange for the purpose of the superintendent search.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just think it's important to say, because our study session is on Zoom and in person, but not recorded, that we met on, as it says here, under the 824 summary, met and had a presentation from Thought Exchange, which is the company that we used when we were doing the strategic planning 2 years ago regarding the values, vision, and mission, and made a determination after discussion, had a discussion about whether or not it would be a useful tool in including the community, staff, and students while we're doing the superintendent search.
Yeah. I think with anything, there's a lot of pros and cons, and I think we talked about how this would really give us a tool to not only use for the superintendent search, but also for the board to carry out their commitment to really be, engaged with the community this year. And this will help us to further facilitate our commitment to with communication to the community. And I particularly like the fact that it reduces a lot of staff time in the analysis of the data. So even though it is additional cost, but when you weigh it against the cost of potential staff time to analyze the data that comes in, then I think it is really beneficial for that purpose.
And it will also be able to be used by the district for other purposes. But this decision that we're making is whether or not we will use it as part of our superintendent selection process. Any further discussion? Nope. Okay. All in favor of adopting Thought Exchange as one component of our superintendent selection search process? Yes, please say aye. All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? No. So that passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Deborah, for pulling that out and making that clear. Okay. Now we get to what I was so eager to jump into before. Board Policy 1008, Annual Board Planning Agenda. This is the annual monitoring of the policy. The board report of compliance is attached for review and determination of compliance. And you can take a look at the attached document, which is the annual board planning agenda. Does somebody else present this?
I move that we approve or find the superintendent in compliance of board policy 1008 annual board planning agenda. This is a board compliance. Oh,
This is the board compliance.
move that we find the board in compliance of board policy 1008 annual board planning agenda.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'll jump in for the sake of discussion. I've said this many times before, but I really love the agenda that or the calendar that we set out. It's always a challenge to get it in front of people and to help them locate it. But it just maps out very clearly what our calendar looks like for the year, what can be looked forward to if people have questions as to which policy is going to be brought up, when it can be brought up. It's just an incredibly useful tool. And so I think having that there has been a benefit to the board. And the more we can acclimate our community to using that calendar as a point of information, I think will benefit everyone.
I guess I'd like to add on to that and say, I did not really understand how the calendar worked until I joined the board. And I would love it if anytime we have an opportunity to kind of communicate better about it or communicate more about it to the public. I mean, it's a beast to even show it to anyone because it's so complicated and it's so tiny, right? Like, I don't know how it would be done really, but whether it's maybe like a short little video or something where someone talks through it and kind of points to parts of it or like lights it up in different colors, because it is really useful. Because if you have an issue that you want to hear addressed by the board, knowing, oh, like they talk about that every year in October, it's part of the review of blah, blah, blah. That's really helpful, you know, in kind of planning your thinking about it and even just planning what meetings you want to attend. So I don't have a solution. I don't have any great ideas, but I would love for us to think about that at some point, and just to be kind of conscious of that, because I don't think it's well understood. Anybody else? Anything else? No? Okay. Okay, so voting on finding the board in compliance with board policy 1008, the annual board planning agenda requirements. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? No, that passes by a vote of 5-0. Okay. And now we have the consent agenda. I need a motion on that.
I move we approve the consent agenda as published.
Second?
Any discussion? Do I ask that if it's the consent agenda? I guess I'm going to assume no. Okay. All in favor of the consent agenda as it was posted? Please say aye.
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 All opposed? Say nay. Any abstentions? Nope. The consent agenda is passed by a vote of 5-0. Superintendent announcements.
Sorry to mention to you about the webinar on Monday, so we hope you'll tune in at 5 o'clock. Tuesday, study session again, this room, 3:15, see you there. We'll have a real good discussion around the do's and do nots that can happen with levies. And if time also, the board may have some time to also talk about superintendent succession. I know that we do have a hard stop on the study session time, 3:15 to 4:45. So just a reminder for that. Exciting news this Sunday, if you'd like to stop by or even join Craig and I, or potentially Deputy Superintendent Dr. Render, we will be at the Mercer Island Farmers Market. We will have I don't know if they call them booths, but we'll have a little shade structure there. We have a new banner with our new logo. We'll be passing out some of the, some cool stickers. And we'll also be passing out for folks the community letter that just everybody should have received in the mail recently. So just being able to be there and talk to the community and provide information. Sort of our substitute for the old summer celebration. So watch for that. It will be supposedly in front of, don't know what they're calling it now, but we always call it the Farmers Building. Near that side there. And the new building, as I said earlier, is in place, and I'll include in the update if you want to, if you're a school construction geek like me, if you want to stop by and see it, just shoot me a message and we can go over and check it out. It's super cool. And lastly, just an acknowledgement. Tuesday is her last day, but this is officially Kendall's last board meeting as we send her off into retirement on Tuesday, but it's her last board meeting, and I know she's just going to treasure this one as she heads off into retirement. So huge thank you from me personally for the support she's given me over the past 4 years, also to the board, and of course her time prior to my being here as well. So we'll miss you at the board meetings, Kendall. I know you're going to tune in and watch us from afar.
We'll miss you in general, Kendall. Thank you for everything you've done.
And that's all my announcement.
Okay. Legislative representative update. Do we have one?
I don't have anything for now.
Okay.
But I would like to say that actually I would not be able to go to the WASDA General Assembly. And since Brian's already there, can I ask? Oh,
I have an update that will change that.
okay, you can.
If you don't mind me edging in on your thing. or
Oh,
you
yeah,
can take my
please,
report.
please.
Due to the spiking conditions with COVID in King County and across Washington State, the General Assembly has been postponed. They're moving from a live event in person to a virtual event only. They're proposing that the date for that will be later in October, probably like the 23rd, 24th, somewhere in there of October, which will then allow you, if you're available then, to carry that delegate credential forward. It'll also provide us as a board more opportunity to go through the handbook and set priorities and all of that.
Is there an email list that you can put me on for that? Because I don't think I'm getting any updates for it.
Yeah, I'll double check with them, and it should have updated you as well as Maggie Ty and David with WASDA, so you should be receiving all of the emails now as president, vice president, and legislative representative. But I'll circle.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I think that's
sorry, go ahead.
in WASDA, to like check on what you want to receive, like the daily updates and things like that. Because I don't think I got anything separate as president.
Yeah, I haven't gotten anything separate. Are the I didn't realize that the statewide networking calls had begun again. Did anybody attend today's? Do you want to report on that as part of your board member report?
Yeah, I can do that as part of board member report.
Thanks. Okay, in that case, actually moving on to board reports. Brian, you want to start?
Okay, yeah, so last year, it used to be the legislative committee every Thursday evening would have kind of an in-session update of what has happened. And when COVID hit, that transformed into a statewide networking call for all board directors across the state with updates of what's happening with COVID and changes to laws and all of that. So they took the month of July off and now have resumed. So you can sign up for those to receive those invitations to webinars. Anyone is invited to sit in on those webinars. And many state legislators do, as well as school board directors and other education leaders. As you can imagine, the bulk of the conversations today were around opening schools, what is required by law under the governor's mandate, everything from masking to lots and lots of questions about board meetings, in-person, virtual meetings, what's required. So there's just a ton of information. Abigail Westbrook, who's the head of policy and legal, was providing a lot of information today on and answers from the field or questions from the field concerning masking and distancing and all of that. It usually takes 24 or 48 hours for that to be posted on the WASDA page, but you can watch that full recording of it if you're interested. Yeah, I would say the majority of it had to do with questions around opening. There are some districts that are pushing back on the mask mandate. And so it was made very clear, as has been made from OSPI, that if your school district chooses to willfully ignore the law, as been stated by the governor and set in motion, then they will pull your apportionment funding for public education. I think just yesterday or today, OSPI released the rules around how that will work if you're in that situation. I'm very grateful to know that Mercer Island is not a district in that situation, has worked very closely within the context of the law. And so that's not something that we are at risk of losing our apportionment because of that. But yeah, lots of questions about that today. In other parts of my board report, the East Side King County Work Group has continued, picked up. We took a little time off in July. We met, let's see, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I guess last week was a catch up as we're setting plans in motion for we're going to move 2 weeks ago. We met with Seattle King County Public Health and got some information around testing and vaccines and all of that. See, the one thing I have highlighted here is that mitigation steps, isolation of students with symptoms, and lunches is one of the big questions that we're asking as a work group and are driving to our partners in King County and up to the state level. And I know that's on everybody's minds. And so we heard that in the update earlier today too of the ongoing work with the MOU around synchronous, asynchronous learning, all of that if a student is sick or needs to step out. But we're not alone in those questions. Our partners across the region are asking the same things. I also attended LegRep Learn. It's called the LegRep Learn, but it's for anyone. Again, you can sign up for this under strategic advocacy on the WASDA page. And we met with Representatives Steele, Stonier, and Theringer, along with experts from OSPI and WASDA to discuss simple majority and capital projects and funding for that. And had a really interesting conversation. Marissa Rathbone, who's the head of strategic advocacy, asked that we look at SB 5017, which has to do with prioritizing likely businesses for building contracts and small local contractors. There's issues coming up, especially in some of our rural districts, that local contractors are being outbid by out-of-state organizations. And so that may allow some flexibility in that bidding process, because as we know, when we put out a bid, we have to take the lowest bid by law. So there's some work happening around that that might free that up. Again, that is recorded and you can look at those anytime. Great conversations about funding for capital projects. and bonds and why it's important to get to a simple majority. Currently, to pass a bond, you need 60% or more in order to pass that. So there are many districts that have been trying for years and years and years to pass a capital bond that simply can't, even though they've got 59% of their local folks voting for it. They just can't get there. The Federal Relations Network met through WASDA on the 18th. The FRN caucus is going to be on September 14th from 6 to 7, and you can register from the WASDA website. And let's see, right now, there's a lot of work happening with WASDA and Federal Relations Network, looking into Representative Jamal Bowman's Green New Deal for public schools. It's moving through the House right now. And you can look up that under there, but with the discussions that have been happening locally around infrastructure for battery operated electric buses and all of that, there's an opportunity perhaps in that to pay attention. Apparently it's got some steam in the House, so we're all watching that. And then the last part, with updates on different webinars and stuff you can do, a reminder, the Modern Governance Summit is going to be on the 14th to the 15th of September. Our Region 2 Director Area 2 regional meeting is currently planned for Wednesday, October 6th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. It will be virtual, so you can sign up for that as WASDA at the WASDA website under General Assembly. And there'll be discussion not only what's happening regionally, but also how we kind of prioritize as a region, what would be important in General Assembly. And then you can also, under that registration link in WASDA, look for the various caucuses like the Equity and Access, Small Schools, and Trust Lands Advisory, which are three that I lean into a lot. Shared with General Assembly being postponed. It looks like the General Assembly will now potentially overlap with the NSBA, National School Boards Association Equity Symposium West. That's on October 22nd and 23rd. Currently planned for Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, but that's a much more focused equity discussion that has to do with the Western region of the United States. The Colonizing Education Conference in 2021, hosted by Equity and Education Coalition. That's on November 3rd and November 5th, and you can register with them on their website. And then finally, a couple of pieces with this one. Registration for the WASDA annual conference is now open. It's going to be November 18th to the 20th. There are some new standards by law that are going to be required. This is covered in the networking call today, around professional development for anyone who's works in education or is in a leadership position with education. The law doesn't take effect until next year, but the WASDA team has prepared your certification for it, so you can get certified in that this year at annual conference. You can register for that as a pre-conference thing. And finally, they've announced the lineup of presenters for annual conference, and the East Side Work Group, King County East Side Work Group, has been selected as a presenter at annual conference and talking how you can work regionally with your partners in order to create better access for students and outcomes. So the 10 of us have been invited to present, and we're going to lead off tomorrow morning with a discussion of some framework around that presentation of what it's going to look like. So I'm really excited to be, Deborah and I are invited as part of that team to present at the conference and share what we've learned over the last year. And that covers it for me.
That is exciting. Thank you. David, do you have any reports to report?
No updates, thank you.
Deborah?
I can be brief. I attended and helped with lunch today for during the tech training. So I missed the WASDA update, but I wanted to be at the school. I was at the high school with Superintendent Klosky, and it was really great to see our staff, reintroducing themselves in person and learning. And, the best way to make people happy, as Superintendent Klosky said, is feed them. And so that was fun. Those are some of my favorite things to do. And just wanted to say, you know, I know it was fee and photos for middle school and high school this week, and I'm sure, I'm not as familiar with the elementary school schedules, but I'm sure the back to school stuff is happening next week, meet the teacher and things like that. And just thrilled again that our students are returning to schools. Watching, I know band camp was last week. All the athletics have started. High school athletics have started. Kids are getting put on teams, and I think they're saying turnouts. I don't have anything official, but very high turnouts of kids going and participated, and just really happy to be together and be community. So really excited about starting the school year. Just I know that our leadership team, I'm sure all of our staff did not take the appropriate amount of vacation that they should have taken this summer. Hopefully took some, but just are really appreciative of all the work that you've done. And just would remind everyone, I know people, there's a lot of anxiety with sending our kids back to school, especially with the littles and the unvaccinated littles, and it is scary, but just communicate with your teachers and your site leads, and they got it covered, and their number one priority is health and safety for our kids. And just appreciate all the work that our entire staff has done to make sure that our kids can return to schools and be as healthy and safe as possible. So thank you.
Tam, do you have any reports?
Yesterday, I was able to volunteer at the Mercer Island High School for freshman orientation. So, you know, checking them in, it was super nice to see other parents and to see other freshmen. You know, my oldest is a freshman this year, and he kind of, I didn't know it's for parents too. So I just kind of sent him down the hallway, and then half an hour he came back with his pictures and books. I'm like, you got it? He's like, yeah. So I'm trusting that he got orientated and know what's going on. But it was really nice to see. We had like a radio station out there with the music on. We had balloon arch. We have this like wavy band thing that you see at car lots, you know, which is very festive. So it's really nice just to be in the environment, and also just recognizing what beautiful facilities we have. And it kind of made me want to go back to high school. I was kind of excited. I was like, wow, you know, and to see parents come back. And I think the parents were more nervous when they were coming in the door with their freshmen, you know, than the kids. The kids are like, yeah, we're cool. And the parents were all like anxious, like, what do we do? Where should we go? Like, I don't know, just go down the hallway and then you'll figure it out. So it was really nice. It was really well coordinated. And I'm excited for this school year as well.
So I'll just chime in as the third one, talking about Fee and Photo Day yesterday at the high school. But I traditionally have always gone with my kids to Fee and Photo Day, and I couldn't go yesterday because I was still having some symptoms of this cold. And my kids ran into a snafu or two. And I just wanted to say thank you to the lovely staff that helped them sort out all their issues. And like, sorry, I accidentally muted myself. I knew that they were in good hands. I wasn't worried at all, but I kind of got the succession of texts from my kids like, oh, mom, you forgot to pay for this and I'm not signed up for that, you know, but don't worry, someone's helping me. And I was just very happy when they were able to come home with everything sorted out, you know, with their books, everything taken care of. Like some of the things that we had done wrong, like in some other places might have become like a big snafu and like not a great start to the year. And I just really appreciate all the effort that is being put in by volunteers, as well as staff, as well as teachers, as well as the administration to get us launched well this year. So thank you for that. And that's kind of what I got. Very excited. I cannot tell you how excited I am about the kids going back to school full-time next week, especially my littlest, who has not set foot in a school building since March of 2020. March of 2020. Yeah. So I'm very excited, and I want to wrap her in a bubble, but I'm very excited. So, thank you, everyone. That's all we've got. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning at this lovely early time of 7:05 p.m., please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Anyone abstaining? Nope. That passes by a motion of 5-0. We are adjourned at 7:05 PM. Thank you so much, all. And thank you, Kendall.
In-person directors, guess what's back? The infamous red folder after every meeting.